All right, welcome everybody to Traction Thursday. It is my privilege and pleasure to introduce Mr. Bill Hickey, who will talk about finding love in the workplace. So let's please, if finding love in business, let's give him a warm Traction Thursday.
What we'll cover is something about me and some achievements and hobbies, my history before Fairfield, which is significant, my history at Fairfield. I came here in 1980, so we got a few years in there. Finding love in business, a model for business, and the Commons, an organization that is emerging now, which I'm involved in, and a presentation by Amy. And Amy may be available later or not, we just don't know. So she's going to get a little bit in today. And then Q&A, and I hope we can end up in about a half hour for Q&A. And if anybody thinks I'm Irish and I'm old and I tend to talk a lot. So give me the time signal and I'll move on. About me, this is tough to do, but you got to know. I have strong quantitative side initially. I'm an engineer and I've got patents and we'll go through that. I have a strong qualitative side developed over many years. I'm 85 years old, so I got a little edge on everybody in doing that. The key in life is finding balance, and I want to talk about that. And finding love, I was just fortunate, got 59 years of marriage in with the same lovely lady who has been just involved in everything that I do, and I couldn't do it without that first love. And I want to share some spiritual and mystical development that is very, very important in my life. And I want to talk about finding love everywhere and sharing that love and the organizations we have to do that. I would only give the image, many images of my wife, Judy, but I go back to the hippie days and all that, and there's a song by Gracie Slick called White Rabbit, my favorite. But stress is a big thing to handle in business, and it builds. And you put up these boundaries and sticks and everything, and you want your safe place. So you go down like a rabbit into these briar patches, and you go down the rabbit hole to escape. You escape to the bunny. You want to find the bunny where you're safe and secure. I've always had that. My education, I was fortunate, and I have a Bachelor of Mechanical Engineering from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, one of the top technical schools in the country that receives more money in grants than any other engineering school in the country. They're really into it. Recently, they've had a computer program, 10 years ago, they had a computer program they developed that talks to all the other programs. Now, that's great because you can ask a question, it gives you an answer. That's not what they did. They set it up to look at a field and then come back, what is the right question? And I have a Master of Science in the Lally School of Management. I went back after 7 years in the field to a very fine school of management and got a master's degree. And I met some people there that have really affected me in my life. I want to talk about that. My professional achievements, I founded a $7 million annual sales graphic arts company. And then I operated manufacturing companies in the United States and in London and in Italy, Casale Monferrato, Italy. And I established a holistic spiritual seminar program with Bucky Fuller, Ida Rolf, who's the founder of Rolfing, Werner Erhard, Ishtok Pentoff, we'll talk about him a little bit, and Dr. Walter Houston Clark and Leonard Orr, some of the, way back in the 70s, some of the leaders in the field. And held directorships in 7 U.S. and 2 foreign companies, hold 2 basic patents in hydraulic pumping, and those are in 7 countries. And I registered commodities Future Trading Corporation, and associate professor of an accredited university, MLU, and a member of the President's Committee for Handicap for Presidents Nixon and Ford, because I've had the fortune to work with handicapped people in a very successful way. My hobbies, which are more important than you might think. And I say to you, take your hobbies really seriously. And part of it is fun. You have to go for the bliss. You have to go for the joy, but you really have to go to it. And if have a tendency to become an aficionado, go for it. It's really important. So the Transcendental Meditation Program, also the Buddha Dharma Yogas, instructed by Kalu Rinpoche, and the teachings of Tantric Yoga for family people, the teacher of Science of Creative Intelligence, and governor of the Age of Enlightenment, the Gnostic teachings of mystical spirituality, the Order of Christos, the priesthood. I'm a priest in the Catholic Church, and I'm a bishop in the Harmony Circle Church, and I'm also a Knight Templar in the Sovereign Military Order of the Knights Templar, and I'm getting old. We don't do this anymore, but I was in the Chevalier du Sang Graal, which was an organization of knights that was here in Fairfield, and Amy was part of that too. And I'm a member of the yacht club, the Rathburn Yacht Club, which has members in that from a real cross of Iowa, not just Fairfield. The recent Commodores have been from Fairfield. But I've met people who are, the head of the boat next was somebody who was the head of Iowa State Agricultural Department, had a $10 million budget in Guyana, and has since left and started a business on his own in how to pollinate and the structure of pollens and how to do this, and he hit it big. And so there's people like that are willing to work with us on a board of directors level in Fairfield. I've confirmed this with several people of that caliber. They all come from Rathburn Yacht Club. Take your hobbies seriously. When I was at the Fafner Bearing Company, I was an engineer and then a process engineering manager, which was, I was the youngest to do that by 8 years, and forming everything on quoting and making bearings and everything like that. And then I became a assistant superintendent in the precision bearing division. This was a 6,000 person, million square foot company that had many different plants. And they sent me for 6 months on training when I first got there. I was a well-paid engineer. I made $585 a month for my first job. But when I got to the precision bearing division, I learned, because there was no internet, I learned that you really have to collect your own information. You have to be in an information-rich environment. And so I had gotten catalogs from everybody. And we had to make a bearing for the Boeing 707 engine from Pratt & Whitney. And it was this big, and round, had a flange. It was made out of M50 tool steel, and nobody knew how to do it. So that was my job. And I had a meeting, and I said, well, they have these big forging machines. They had them in World War II, and we had a catalog that sort of described them from Niagara. And but if we got something like that, we could try it. And it has to be about this big and about that. But I really don't know if it would work exactly. So we went back, and a couple of months later, they're digging a hole down in the forging department. And I said, "What's that for?" He said, "Oh, we found your forging machine. We're going to install it. It's just as much underground as above the ground." This is a picture of it, and that's me over in the left-hand corner. And we're trying to do, this M50 steel is 100,000 PSI forging temperatures. And we didn't know if it could take it. So I said, we'll put SR4 strain gauges all over it and keep loading it up until it breaks. And we'll know what breaks, and that's where the limit is, and we'll fix that part and go ahead. And I predicted that the pinion, there's a bowl gear, a big gear, and a little pinion driving everything. The pinion would break. And we did that, but the bowl gear broke. And so instead of $1,500 for a pinion, it was $10,000 for a bowl gear. So the vice president of manufacturing took that broken tooth, and they had it milled off, and it made it into a name sign for Bill Hickey, and they presented it to me. It was a great place to work. We worked on the camera bearings for the U-2s. We were working with bearings we had tolerances, but we were experimenting, and we were getting down into the 2 to 5 millionths of an inch tolerance. And this is 1970, 60, 70. Where that's gone now, who knows? I left there, went to graduate school, and came back to the director of engineering, as the director in engineering at Perkins Machine and Gear in West Springfield. That was 40 miles from where I lived, and I commuted back and forth. And there were 300 people. I was the top engineer in the whole company, and I learned a lot and about working with people and unions. And then I became the executive vice president for the tech group. It's a company I started with another fellow. And it was a conglomerate of 7 small companies in the field of power transmission and graphic arts. We founded and served as the chief officer, and we acquired a public company, Smythe Manufacturing, and we were a smaller company. So how we did that was kind of interesting. It was the minnow swallowing the whale, and we didn't have the money to do this. We had to go create it. And if you look at a balance sheet, in the upper left-hand corner, there's the only thing that's real. It's called cash. And even that may be changing. But the rest of it, the assets, the liabilities, the equity, the sales, the cost of goods, the expenses, the surplus, and what you do with it and all that. There are general rules in the United States on how to do this, and different rules in other countries how to do this, but it's all a narrative. And so you can put numbers down, and if you go to the accredited people, they'll work with you on your narrative. This is very important for a startup company. You really have to have not a bookkeeper or an accountant or keep track of this. You need high-level, experienced people who can get you where you want financially. And I'll just say, most of that finance you won't find in Fairfield. We have to go somewhere else. And there's a risk. So a lot of my friends have done that and been very successful, but they live in California now. And they started companies here because the money was in California. The story, the narrative was of interest in California. I had banks, we were in the jewelry business, and I had banks tell me that, Bill, it's gold in your inventory. If it were corn, we could do something. Gold, I don't know if we can do anything. So the tech group, I had many mentors. We went fast. We were up, at millions of dollars quickly in a couple of years. Dick Curry and Chuck Gossett, you don't know them, but they were two fellows that I was going to go into business with, but I chose to go with a tech group and make that. But they remained friends and advisors, and they had their ear on the ground for what was happening, and they kept me always informed. Spencer Hayden was the dean of the graduate school while so he was a very important person I got to know personally. And he gave me tremendous advice. Dick Koopman was an investor, but he was the largest investor of Aetna, Hartford Fire, Travelers. He owned all the tobacco land in Connecticut. He was worth hundreds of millions. Oh, he was the largest. He was the largest investor in United Technologies, Pratt & Whitney too. And he taught me so much about business. He told me once when I was becoming president, Bill, he shook my hand and says, "This is the last time anybody will tell you the truth." And I came from, and Frank Chapman was the attorney that structured what we did. And you have to have a brilliant attorney. You can buy them, but you have to have them. And my Perkins elders, when we started, we took a lot of the people from Perkins who were in their 60s and some of them 70s. And the company had a union problem and didn't make it. So they came with us and we learned and we provided for them. And Arthur Anderson, which was a great accounting firm, structured so much stuff for us. In the first 18 months, we had audited statements. Nobody has audited statements in 18 months of starting a company. We did. Usually takes 5 years of minimum. And we made $240,000 profit. And Maharishi Mahashogi, in December 13th, 1973, at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we were doing well, and I had my moment. We could continue to do well forever and make a good profit. And I had a beautiful house not far from the vice president of engineering of United Technology, the president of Phoenix Insurance, and I had a big in-ground pool. That was it. I was 33 years old. And my inner voice said to me, no. I cannot do this. I joined the yacht club, I joined the golf club, and I do this the rest of my life. No. And what I said was out loud, my secretary came in until we called him. I said, Maharishi, help me. I shouted him. And 2 weeks later, December 27th, 1973, I met Maharishi. I can't explain it. When we sold the tech group, it was a difficult thing to sell because some of the shareholders wanted to have a hostile takeover, and other shareholders wanted to sell it, and I was in the other shareholder group, and sell it so that the employees could find a good home in the future. And we worked hard on that. We had to change our balance sheet immensely in order to do this. So we worked with some fine people, lawyers and accountants, and I went over and we tried to sell the foreign companies, which they wanted to do. They wanted to own their themselves and not be owned. In Italy, it's a very difficult legal situation. Laws are different. And we had a lot of business in South America and the Orient, and we had to negotiate that and stuff. So we sold the business in Italy. The Italians are unbelievable to negotiate with. And, you can go all 12 hours on Monday, and on Tuesday it's a different day. So we said from Dick Koopman, go and make this offer. We'll give you time to give us one offer. You got 48 hours. And if it's a good enough offer, we'll accept it. If it's not good enough offer, the deal's off. And so they dug deep, very deep, and they came up with a fantastic number. It was beyond what we would bargain. But the difficulty is you can't really do it in Italy, and you can't get the money out of Italy. It's not our problem. But we met them at Liechtenstein. We had a bank there, and they showed up. These are striped suit people with curly mustache, really sharp. They showed up on a golfing holiday, and their golf bags were filled with dollar bills. Then I went to Japan, and we had some machines that we wanted to, in our inventory, get rid of. And they're old machines, and they're good in the Orient and in South America, but they're not modern, and there's a lot of money in them. And so I negotiated with Kanematsu Goshu, one person that was representing them, and we had a very truthful get together. And we have a one-time opportunity. We'll sell you the rights to the machines, and you have to buy a lot of them initially. And they came in way above what we looked at. We were hoping for $1 million. They came in with millions. So we were able to readjust our balance sheet and get all the people into the pensions and future that they wanted to. And then I started another one called, with some other people, Interface. And we did this in Rentham, Massachusetts. We live communally, and it was with my cousin Tom Hickey and with Rick Ingrassi, who was a psychiatrist and the head of the American Association for Psychiatry. And we lived communally. And then we also had Eddie Haubin, who would live in another cooperative environment. And we opened with a big, we hired the Hayden Planetarium. I don't know if you ever heard of that. And Bucky Fuller was the speaker, and we filled it. And we had a great time, and we also ended up ranking the fourth largest holistic health organization in the country. And we're going to talk more about that because Interface 1.0 is a little bit like Commons 2.0. And then I came to NIU. And I was a teacher, senior faculty at NIU, and we're making courses from scratch because it's first year of accreditation. And I taught all these courses, and some of them were technical, and some of them are not technical. One of my favorites was behavioral organization, and sometimes we can chat about that. But what I learned is that from Maharishi and all the tapes in the library, sort of how to create a cocoon for business. And there's a 12 steps of anybody that's an alcoholic and things like that. And there are the 11 steps for the rest of it. And the part we work on here is resources create opportunities. And we talk about resources here and everything, but you are the resource. You individually are the resource, but more important, you collectively are the resource. There's so much in here that if we can get together and talk with each other about what our needs and our desires and our truth is, we can conquer anything. We can come up with creative approaches that give us opportunities that are enormous and will make Fairfield a different place to live. And the other, if you notice, there's some italics and others. There's some things like resources and opportunities and objectives, which are states, sort of goals you want to be at. There's other, in the italics, there are action steps. So that in dynamic programming, you can look at it as states and stages. And we want to define our states very carefully. And we want to create the stagecoach that gets us from one state to another. This is the way a business operates. And when you get to the end, measuring for success, getting feedback, defining your success is really, really important. And part of success is what is your exit strategy? Most of you will go, if you're successful, will go through several businesses before you arrive at something sustainable and stable. And how do you get out of the business you're in and get to the next one? Most people don't put that in their plan. They stumble into it and they either get a lesson or they fail and don't come back. So you have to really watch that. Choices are your basic resource. Choice determines action. Action yields results in nature. Nature is innocent. Your action will yield, the results are in nature, not in your mind. The results contain the lesson or the fruit. Lessons are repeated until learned. Fruit contains the resource for more evolved choices. And if you use up all the fruit on fancy cars and women and blah, 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 you don't have the resources to take the next step. You have to be use your fruit well. You have to be careful. But I'm not saying you have to be cheap. You got to be thrifty. And you have to take care of yourself and your family. I've been accused of, in a number of operations, of charging too much as a consultant or too much as an operating officer and all those different things. I have a family. I have my needs. I will not bow to my priorities. But getting this cocoon going a few times of those 11 steps, you're going to learn how to fly, leave the cocoon. And a butterfly is 90% wings. Surplus is a byproduct of fulfilling activity. Profit is just a byproduct of fulfilling activity. And when the cocoon matures, you've got 90% wings. You can go wherever you want. Learning to fly to fulfillment. It's balance. If you're a skier, you might understand this. Qualitative and quantitative, and the inner is your energy, your personal energy, who you are. Left brain and the right brain. The left brain represents what's on the outside. The right brain represents what is on the inside. Getting this in balance is everything. What's love? Fulfillment. The urge to merge creates the surge. It will take you everywhere. A scientific definition is given by Dr. Michael Dilbeck at NYU. Love is the universal, unconditional, positive regard for all. You have to take this to heart. Everybody here can do this. It's not difficult, but it's a skill. You have to practice. And the practice of love, or in a more mystical sense, the praxis of love is unconditional, positive regard for another. And we can all practice this together here now. Sustainable love in business, unconditional positive regard for coworkers, customers, stakeholders, vendors, environment, and those yet to come. Leave it better than you found it, and do not any harm. And personally, will receive the outer and inner rewards. I was a vice president at Crest Jewel, and Crest Jewel was a great company. And I met Tom Stanley there, and we went pretty big. We got 108 employees. A partner at Hickey and Hickey Consultants. I went into the Beckley group and told Ed Beckley, let me go in and find something and report to you, tour your company and come back. And I found that Fairfield Television was selling courses, and those that didn't buy the course, they got all those names and had a room full of hundreds of thousands. And I founded Fairfield Telemarketing, and in a number of weeks we were making $90,000 a week. And then I did that with some brilliant people as sort of a smaller version, was short form marketing with the Richland Institute, and then worked with a handicap at Cottle Industries. And I then went into the selling mode in International Trading Group, and I worked at Bovard Studios down the road. I made that move doing that, and then chief of staff with Roger Tom Stanley I was involved full-time back into the movement, and also regional director with Roger John Hagelin, which were some of the most fulfilling jobs I've ever had. But I had a red line. I'll share that with you. As I would go into debt doing that because they don't pay much money. But I had my red line. It was when I hit the $100,000 mark, I would say that's enough. And I hit that mark and I said that was enough. And they said, well, we'd like to help you. It was really friendly, but we can't. So I left. I would say I retired. And then Judy and I consulted 12 assisted living facilities in Michigan and Illinois. And luck would have it, I made my 100,000 back. And then I had 2 strokes and retired from active work. And we have the Commons. I'm a little technical here, but it's based in my mind. I'm just one of several, but it's based in my mind at something Maharishi gave. And there, the Rig Veda, there's all these different modules, and in the beginning, you talk about existence. At the end, it's talking about going into action. In the end of the 10th module, go together, speak together from a common source. Integrated is your knowledge, and assembling is significant in unity. By virtue of your unitedness, by that which remains to be united, by the Lord perform action in nature to generate wholeness and fulfillment. To me, that's what the Commons is about. Other people will talk, they'll say something completely different. But there's a common value in what they say. The Commons.org is a website. Paul Stackstead did it. Our hard resources, we've got 15,000 plus rare books on all traditions of fulfillment. You name it, it's there. They're really good. And our process is to form a circle and tell the truth. And Amy and I will help you do that. And the basic purpose of the Commons is how can we help? Amy, you want to get up and say something?
I think we're out of time.
No, so say something.
We have about 5 minutes.
How about one?
Okay.
1 minute.
So Bill was talking about the Commons. That's a nonprofit organization that Bill and I and a handful of other people have started. And he has listed me as a natural healer. And yes, I will claim that. I don't like labels. I have background in education, psychology, art, managing small businesses, and healing. My thrill and passion about being a part of the Commons is exactly the last line on the previous screen. How can we help? That's what fills my heart, is helping other people and bringing everybody in the community together. There are plenty of resources to fulfill needs and wants. So that's all I have to say for right now. Thank you.
Questions for Bill? Start with Bob here, and then I'll get you, George.
So Bill, where do you see the biggest opportunity for us right now at this stage of the development of Fairfield? Where do you see some of the real big specific areas of opportunity for us to think about?
I think the the idea that we need money, we need hard things and everything like that isn't necessarily the first opportunity. We need to come together and find out who we are and what we really want to do. And then once we know who we are and once we know what we want to do, the hard resources will naturally follow. So we're close. This group is exceptional talents. And we present to each other, but we don't spend a lot of time talking to each other.
So he had
Yes,
someone else, and then I want to.
Okay. Yep.
I noticed one of your first slides, you had worked in commodities. Why did you work in finance during that period of time, considering your background?
I'm not quite getting the question.
Okay, Jody may speak up.
One of your first slides, it said you were that for commodities.
Yeah.
At a finance firm, so why that's changed through your engineering background?
Oh, well, an engineer makes a good commodities training representative because you sit in an information-rich environment. And if you know anything about sales, it's building confidence, et cetera. It's a great field to go into because you can make a lot of money quickly. It's a difficult field to go into because every salesman wants to believe in what they're selling. And so if you believe in what you're selling, that's one thing, but most of them have difficulty with that. I've worked with some of the best, and it's a gray area to work in. And
I don't know how to ask this question, but it's really a follow-up on Bob's question. And it's really about fostering community conversations. So I have a group that spoke extensively to Ann Walton, who is the director now of the Sierra Club and also consulting with Faith Reeves on the Fairfield Action Committee. And our discussion was about fostering civic conversations in Fairfield because there's so many activities going on in town that I think the time is right for that. And I just like to hear more about your understanding of how to bring people together in conversation.
well, it's difficult. I'm 85. I have difficulty getting to evening meetings. So if you're looking for people to get to some evening meeting Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, I'm out. And if I am out and about, I'm doing something else. So I can't, the older people, they can only do so much at night. Luncheons or lunch type meetings are the easiest to get people to, and there should be more of those, but they don't need to be big. Having small groups and then from those centers of influence, getting together with the top people in those small groups, Venn diagrams, and getting them together, but that adds power to everything. And then you keep growing that way. But finding a convenient place and a convenient time and a convenient method of process, which I would suggest circles, would be the way to go. And having the truth be the guide. Whatever comes out truly that people want, go for that and don't analyze it.
Okay. Other questions? Very interesting. Yes, sir. David.
Incredible presentation. You do not look 85. It just stuns me at people like in this community how much younger they look. But when you mentioned about the collaborations you did with Leonard Orr and with Buckminster Fuller and all these other people, Like, these are some of my favorite names of all time, people that were spiritual leaders, and it's incredible how you guys created this My Commons. From what I gather, it seems to be like you found a way to gather all these different modalities of how people find fulfillment, and you found the similarities across them. That's kind of how you're able to work with so many different kinds of people.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask, like, because I didn't understand fully, maybe how did some of those initial collaborations come about with those individuals? And, what did it end up leading into?
Oh, yeah, we gotta go to lunch. You and I.
Oh,
Yeah.
Amy, we gotta go to lunch.
definitely.
There's a book. Talking the Wild Pendulum by Ishtok Bentov. And we're mentioned in the preface, how we helped him in getting everything going. It's kind of genius.
Yeah.
Whoa. And
I love all this.
so you can read up on some of this stuff, but, Walter Houston Clark,
Mhm.
we would meet with him and talk about some absolutely amazing, meet and do amazing things. And my son Sean he was a lot younger, this is 1970 something. And he would have tea with Ruth, his wife. I mean, we just did this face to face with people, meeting with them and telling the truth about where we wanted to go. And everybody's kind and they help you. If they're not kind, go somewhere else.
We have time for one more question. Kevin?
You're clearly a deep thinker, and you talked a lot about your values along your journey. Was there some point when you realized like your own personal superpower, something that gave you an edge throughout all this?
Really interesting question.
Good question.
A few different times. The most recent being I had a stroke. And then I had another one, and it really affected me. I spent a week up at University Hospital, and it was 11 years ago. And it was in the lizard part of my brain. So it affected how I thought. And I met with a doctor and said, it's interesting talking to you, as most of the people that are around to talk, but you are, how did you survive? And I said, well, meditation and yoga. He says, continue. But Bob gave a presentation a few times ago, and I haven't had time to sit down with old loving Bob and go through it. But my thinking changed, my existence changed. Something about my lizard part of the brain was changed, and these two parts didn't change, but they opened up. And there's been a great development since then.
Let's give another round. This is